you make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give. And that giving being the driven, I mean, it's a biblical principle as well. You know, if he that's responsible with little will be made responsible for lots. You know, it's just part of those. It's a universal truth that the more you give, the more, I don't know, fulfilling that is, the more you get.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how on where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, freedom fighters. How often do you give to others? I mean, really give freely without anyone knowing you're doing it and without expecting anything in return ever. Now, be honest with yourself. I mean, a lot of us say we will or we would like to, but there's always some excuse for why we haven't quite got around to it. You know, the old, I would love to, but. I'd love to, but I don't have enough time. I'd love to, but I'm too busy. I'd love to, but I have enough trouble looking after myself, let alone others. Well, then there's the old, when I ... then ... When I have more time, then I'll give. When I earn more money, then I can donate to those in need. When I've secured my own family, then I can help others. Now, that's all good. But if there's one thing I've found in common with everyone that is successful and leads truly fulfilled lives, it's that they all give more than they receive. They give first and they keep giving of their time, of their money, and their care. And the really interesting thing is that the more you give, the more that comes back to you. So I don't care how busy you are, I'm going to challenge you to start giving today. Now, just start small with a short, sweet, random act of kindness. Something as simple as a warm smile or a happy hello for a complete stranger. Standing up so that someone can have your seat. Or buying a small cup of coffee for someone on the street. Or start by just asking one person every day this really simple question. How can I help you now? And then pause. They will be shocked and you'll be surprised at the genuine sense of fulfillment and the feeling of well-being that you experience as a result. Just do this once a day, every day, without fail, and I guarantee that your life will change for the better over the long term. I want you to email me on bushy@khgroup.com.au and let me know how you go and how things change for you and others over time. Now, to inspire and motivate you to enjoy the benefits of a life of giving, you're really going to love today's chat with Daniel Gibbs. You see, from a really early age, Daniel's life mission has been to help others. And it's weaved its way through every aspect of his life. And it's one of the main reasons, I believe, why his life has and continues to flourish and go from strength to strength. Daniel started life as a podiatrist, and in the space of just 10 years has grown an award-winning business along with the owner of other retail food businesses, a property portfolio, and then sold them all and is now improving the lives and business of healthcare professional operations all over the world through his unique clinic mastery movement. He's a true leader among freedom fighters. Now, during our really energising conversation, You'll enjoy some great answers to a wide range of questions that include things like, what is success and what does it take to be successful today? How do you replace yourself to prosper? What's the 80% of the 80% rule? And how does this make a difference? What are the benefits of volunteering? How do reserves make a difference? And you're going to love this one. How is investing linked with toenails? Yes, you heard that right. And finally, this is a good one as well. What has cooking a cake got to do with success? He's someone who just exudes passion and energy, so please enjoy this great conversation with Daniel Gibbs. Welcome back, Freedom Fighters. Well, today's guest is someone that I've known personally and professionally now as both a client of his and a client of ours for must be nearly 10 years. And I've got to say that right from the very outset, I've always admired and respected his energy, his values, his very proactive, caring and forward-thinking approach. And I'm really excited to be getting invested today with Daniel Gibbs. Welcome aboard, Daniel.
Hey, Bushy, how are you?
Really good, mate. It's been way too long since we've spoken, and I've been following your trajectory with great interest, and you continue to do well, mate. So looking for you to download all of your hard work and all of your achievements today. But mate,
I've seen the calibre of the guests on the show, and I'm quite humbled to be here, Bushy. Thank you very much,
mate.
And hopefully we can make it a worthwhile discussion.
I have no doubt about that, mate. And I wouldn't feel too humbled, mate. The fact that you feel humbled speaks volumes in itself, Daniel, because you're one of those people who just gets it done, but does it with integrity, mate, which is one of the values that's pretty hard to find in this day and age, mate. So, mate, to get things started for those who don't know Daniel Gibbs, can you give us a rundown on who you are, what you do, and where you're currently heading, mate?
Okay, very good. Well, my name's Daniel Gibbs. I have a wife and two girls, 6 and 3 years old. I live in Adelaide. I work from home. I enjoy a round of golf 2 to 3 times a week. And I love a croissant at our cafe at the end of the street, it sounded like it was my cafe, but it's not. It's the cafe I like to go to at the end of the street. When I was young, I consider I was fortunate to know what I wanted to do, and that was really to help people one-on-one in a medical capacity. And what that led to was me becoming a podiatrist and later opening a podiatry clinic. And then as opportunities came up, I became involved in a few other businesses, health, franchise, retail. I've dabbled in property investing, and over the past year, I've sold all my businesses except one, and that's Clinic Mastery, which is where we help health professionals to lead their teams to offer the best experience for their clients and grow their clinics as well.
Love that, mate. Now let's drill into Clinic Mastery, given that's the focus. I mean, you've come out of the podiatry space, but I'm guessing that Clinic Mastery is helping a much broader base of health professionals than podiatrists. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I feel so privileged that there are a lot of health professionals out there who want to do the best for their clients, and sometimes the business side of things is a little bit much. And so to be able to be there to help them with the business side of things is just fantastic. And to be able to help other clinic owners to help more people is fantastic. I mean, for me, it starts with lifestyle. I like to have a good lifestyle. I want to be leaving a mark. I want to be an example for my family. And along the way, just helping people along the way.
Yeah, so I guess it's fair to say that helping people is your why you do what you do. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because it sounds like it's something that was deeply rooted right from a very early time.
Yeah, it was. It's funny when you talk about helping people, you kind of think, well, what gives you the right to be in a position to be able to help people? And sometimes just in saying that you like helping people, really what it is you get a lot from helping people. So it's kind of two ways. I love helping people because I get a lot from it.
Yeah.
And I love that people get something from it, however small or right that is. Obviously, it's not so much about me, but it's the vehicle for the message and someone being ready to receive that message and take action as well.
Yeah.
But I like to try and put myself in a position where I can be able to, and it's something that I've always wanted to do since I was young. My mum's a physiotherapist.
Okay.
And I would often see people come and see her, and they probably walk out of the treatment room feeling a little worse than when they walked in. And my dad was always involved in small business as well as a graphic designer, and he was a bit of a business collector as well.
Okay.
But for me, I watched how people came to mum with problems, and they would always leave saying thank you so much. And I really liked that, and I got interested in anatomy. I got interested in how the body worked, and I wanted to become a physio. I was one of those podiatrists who missed out on physio by a mark and decided to continue with podiatry. It's not something you sort of set up your life thinking you want to cut toenails for the rest of your life, but...
Well,
I do love the profession of podiatry. I think it's great to be able, it's not about the feet, it's about the... for anyone who doesn't know, podiatrist is the health professional that's dedicated to helping people with their feet. And but for me, it wasn't about the feet; it was about the people attached to the feet, and that's what I really enjoyed about being able to help people in that space.
Well, having someone who's just badly fractured their foot in a hockey injury a few weeks ago, I've suddenly come to have a much greater respect for how important the foot is in relation to everything else that you want to do with your life. And
now, you did tell me about this fracture, and it doesn't sound like a good one, but what better way to be spending your time than recording podcasts while you're sitting there with your foot up, hopefully resting.
I am.
Good patient.
I'm literally sitting here, Daniel, with the foot elevated on a stool, with the microphone in my hand. So, but I've been a client of yours for some time. What I loved about your approach right from the get-go was that you take a systematic approach to get to the symptoms of what the issue are, rather than treat or band-aid the particular exercise. And I have a sense that approach to not only your business, but is also a fairly strategic approach to the way you tackle life. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, that's right. Something I got from a dentist who did have a clinic in Brisbane, Paddy Lund. He had a clinic policy at his clinic where you blame the system, not the person. And what that meant was he'd always be looking for solutions in the form of systems. Because if something is a problem, it means that there's been a breakdown in the procedure or the system to be able to get there. And I guess maybe it's my personality type. I think in terms of systems, I think in terms of reverse engineering problems and breaking them down to manageable steps. And I think I really liked that from a health perspective. It's been 5 years since I've consulted as a podiatrist, and only recently, as I mentioned, sold that business. And I really feel like anything in life, if you're thinking about designing your lifestyle or designing where you want to be, you can reverse engineer where you want to be, break it down into manageable steps and sort of set the plan and off you go and take action. And that's how I've really worked. Now that you say it, it's kind of becoming clear to me that it's been revealed that is sort of how I got to where I am now, which for me is having that freedom, being able to see the sky during the day, being able to have freedom over my time, to be able to live close to the school so I'm not stuck in traffic twice a day for the school pickup. It's just little things like that I've kind of been really intentional about and worked backwards to put in place the foundation in order to be able to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And is that something that's been intuitive, or how is that thinking and that sort of intentional approach developed, mate? Can you think back to when you first started doing that and what influenced you to take that sort of an approach to life?
Yeah, it's been from watching other people that I want to be like, I guess, and really seeing what they've done and wondering how I can do the same thing, or can I copy it? Because anything that's really out there. It's not new. Success is one of those things that's very individual. Whatever success means to you, whatever success means to me could be completely different for someone else.
Yeah.
And the things that you do to be successful, whatever that means for you, are different depending on the time, the era of history that you live in, the location that you live in, the country that you live in, the type of work that you're interested in, your passion, all of those things sort of come to the fore there. I do remember a moment, and just sort of picking up on where I wanted to see the sky before, I remember driving out to a home visit one day.
Yeah.
And it was during the middle of the day, and usually what would happen is I go to work in the morning, I come home at night, it's sort of dark in the morning, it's dark at night, and I didn't really see much of the sky during the day. I remember driving along the road thinking, gee, there's a lot of traffic out here. Now, a lot of traffic for Adelaide means, there's probably 2 or 3 cars lined up at the lights, as you know, Bushy.
That's right. I'm in Clarendon, mate. You don't see any cars out here.
But I kind of thought, wow, what are all these people doing during the day? What's going on? There's a life while everyone's at work. There's life that's happening outside of work. I want to know what that is. I want to be part of that. I want to see what that's doing. And then I remember sort of looking at the sky, going, you can't build anything on the sky. You can't put litter into the sky. Of course, you can pollute it and those sorts of things. I get it, but. It's clean, it's clear, and that's sort of, I like to see that. It makes me feel like there's space and things have got order, again, sort of resonating with that personality type, I guess.
Mate, you mentioned success there, and you're right, success is different to everyone, but I'd be very interested in what your definition of success is in the context of what you've been talking around lifestyle. Can you sort of elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I think it's really just being able to choose what you do with your time. Being able to wake up in the morning and go, yep, this is what I'm going to do today. Or being available to be there for someone, or being able to, things, there's an engine room, there's things that are ticking along no matter what you're doing, and that, some call that financial freedom, some call that, passive income, some call that, different things. Whatever it is that helps me to get to that point where I can choose what I do with my time, that's what I really enjoy. And so that's, I think, what success means to me. Being able to provide for my family if I'm no longer here. If there was an unfortunate event, I'd want to know that my family would be well looked after for life, and that's something that I've tried to work hard to achieve. And whatever mechanism that can be put in place for that, that's something that was important for me. So yeah, I guess it's sort of compounding over time as you become clear on what that vision is. And on that, a lot of people have a vision, but it's not clear until you actually start doing something. And then that vision becomes a lot clearer. And that crystal clear vision becomes something that really motivates you. And then the purpose behind the vision needs to be the thing that motivates you, because it's the purpose that gives you the energy to be able to actually achieve that vision. So understanding, I've spoken a lot so far, I feel quite selfish here, talking about me and my little ecosystem here. But there's a bigger purpose beyond that I want my life to make an impact or leave a difference for other people as well.
What is that bigger purpose?
I kind of struggle with this in terms of communicating it and trying to do it in a way that doesn't seem like you're doing it to make people think you look good about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Something that's really, it's something that's interesting for me is microfinance in developing countries. I think that listening to Tim Costello with World Vision and what they do, and looking at some of the organisations out there, Opportunity International, those sorts of things, they're B1G1. These are people that are making a big difference by encouraging us. I think, so you can probably hear my thoughts dancing around inside my head here.
No, it's good.
But it's good. I think one of the biggest things that helped to propel me in being able to start a business was having access to finance. And access to finance is such a practical thing that you need in order to get something going. You can have an idea. You know, in my particular space, it was about opening a clinic, and I needed finance to be able to do that. Even if it was buying a property or something like that, you kind of need access to finance to start. Some people are lucky they don't need that. And I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs in developing countries that would be able to achieve quite a lot for their local communities if they had access to some kind of finance.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's really driving me at the moment. I'm quite involved with my local church, Salvation Army, and being involved with that as well.
Yeah.
My grandfather had, whether you call it the fortunate or unfortunate, he was the one that brought the idea of the Red Shield appeal to Australia.
Really?
And yeah, so in my family, there's a lot of that legacy around giving and everything that Salvation Army is about. And I guess that's sort of just been through osmosis has been quite a leading me or giving me energy for why I do what I do.
And I think that's why you and I connect so well. Is that similarly, my good wife and I, we're big supporters of B1G1 or the Buy One Give One. And for those listeners who aren't aware of it, it's an awesome organisation that brings. It's really a vehicle for making business do good things in the world. And what I love about the way they operate and the way they can leverage, I mean, one of the programs that we're currently running, which we've doing in parallel with Harvey Penne from Inspire CA, who I know you've had a chat to on the podcast previously, and we've done a fair bit of work with Harvey. For every dollar we save someone in restructuring their finance, we're donating a day's worth of life-giving water to people in Ethiopia through B1G1. And what I love about it is that we don't make a big noise about that to the clients we're helping out, but we do send them a certificate once it's all done and dusted to thank them for the contribution that they've made. So by saving $1, they've effectively saved a life. And what excites me, because I'm like you, Daniel, the biggest satisfaction I get is from helping people without those people knowing that I'm helping them. And it is, in a lot of ways, it is selfish because the energy that I get from that, and the feel good exercise that comes from doing that, which is a direct result of the fact that we put ourselves in a position where we do have financial freedom, which means we've got time on our hands, which means that we can then enjoy that fulfillment by helping others. It's just making a greater world, and you'd start to swim with people of like mind, and that growing community, that giving community that's growing around that is pretty exciting, I think, for the contribution that's going to make to improve the world generally. What's your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember who it was that said this, but I heard it once. It said, you make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give. And that giving being the driven, I mean, it's a biblical principle as well. You know, if he that's responsible with little will be made responsible for lots. You know, it's just part of those. It's a universal truth that the more you give, the more, I don't know, fulfilling that is. The more you get, the more. Yeah, it's just something that has to be driving your business. Otherwise, what will happen is you become successful, and then you start thinking, well, what's all this for?
Yeah.
And you might have lots of money coming into your bank account, and you've you've cracked the code and you've done all the work, and now you're at the other end, and you think, okay, now that I'm here, why am I still unhappy? Why am I still searching? What does this all really mean? And that's where the strength of your purpose needs to be one step beyond where you are in terms of your action or where your business is, because it's got to be leading you further forward. It's got to be continually driving you. Otherwise, things start to just, you kind of, you self-sabotage. I think David Dugan said that on your podcast, Bushy, about self-sabotage and how that happens when you sort of reach a certain level. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I love that, mate. Now, what I'd love to do now, if we can, mate, because to look at your life now, it looks all rosy. What a lot of people wouldn't appreciate is the personal sacrifice, the blood, sweat and the tears and the years of hard work that you've put into making that happen, and probably quite a few trials and tribulations along that journey. Can you, just so it put some perspective around that, do you mind sort of taking us through that journey in relation to what you've invested your time, energy and money in from as far back as you'd like to go, so that we can sort of get a greater understanding of the hill that you've been climbing to put yourself in a position where you can now make such an impact?
Yeah, okay. So thinking about my journey in business, I guess that started when I opened the podiatry clinic, and it was really a case of my security lay in the ability to generate new clients and to be able to build rapport and be able to create great outcomes for clients. And what happened was we opened the clinic and that was great, and it became quite a popular clinic, which is fantastic. What that meant for me was I was consulting quite a lot with clients, and at one point was booked up sort of 4 months in advance. I had to sort of book people in till very late at night sometimes just to make sure everyone got in, and that was great, but I realised that I had a business that was very reliant on me.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like I did all the right things. I didn't put my name on the door out the front. You know, I didn't make the clinic about me. It was more about the experience and the service and the things that we were offering for our clients, and I always wanted to be great. But I had other team members who were kind of twiddling their thumbs and they had a lot of gaps in their diaries, and mine was sort of chock-a-block. And I'd try and get a client to see one of them, and the clients would say, oh, you know, that's great, but I'd rather see you. And this is often the case, you know, regardless of the industry you're in, you know, lawyers, accountants, you know, over the years, what happens is people become very loyal to you as a person, and it's really hard to shake that, and suddenly the business becomes very reliant on you. And what happened was I realized, and really with the help of a business mentor, I realized that the business was too reliant on me. I was sort of earning 80% of the income for the business, and I needed to come off the tools so that the business no longer became reliant on me. I was challenged to do it in 6 months. I kind of negotiated out to 12 months, and that was a bit of a mistake. I thought it'd be much nicer for my clients if I kept it to a 12-month gradual, you know, takedown. Also, you start to think financially, you know, I'm not going to be generating this income for my business anymore. So how am I going to live? You know, and we had a newborn at the time, and there were financial stresses and those sorts of things. But what I did was went through a process of taking a day out of my diary each quarter over the course of the year. Okay. And by the end of the year, I was no longer consulting anymore. The problem was we got to May that year, and I was booked up till Christmas and couldn't really look after any of the clients that I was seeing because there were no spaces in the diary to put them in. And then if anyone wanted to get in with me, they couldn't. And then I'm really grateful to a lot of my long-standing and good clients that they saw other team members and they trusted the process, and that was great. But then I disappoint them when the people who wanted to hang on was they'd say, well, why? How come they can see you and I can't? And I started to really feel like I really wasn't helping anyone here. I was making people upset. People had to wait, and I wasn't really able to treat them very well. And like I said, I should have done it in 6 months. And anyway, came off the tools. And what was interesting about that process was I had to switch my attention to something else. And that was turning my attention to my team. And as a business owner, you really need to take care of your team. And it really is all about your team. And the more I was able to invest in my team, the more they were able to look after the clients, the better the clients were looked after. That looked after the business, and then the business sort of looked after me, which was great. So in that time, not only did I replace my income, but the business grew by 20% as well.
I'd love to drill in here, because this is the dilemma that most entrepreneurs that take the step into entrepreneurship and building their own business face, because a lot of professionals who are good at what they do and love the art and the craft of what they do, it becomes this catch-22 exercise. And it's easy to say, well, I'll just put my energy into the team. But can we get a little bit granular on some of the techniques that you've used to be able to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, firstly, you have to get your ego out of the way. Yeah. So understand that there are other people that can do as good a job as you to help people.
Yeah.
And putting yourself out of the way is a big part of the process. It's quite confronting as well. What if that client likes my team member more than me? And then what if that team member leaves and takes that client with them? What am I going to be left with? There's all these what if. There's a lot of fear that goes into that.
Yeah.
But the more you can create a system that actually helps to nurture and keep you connected with your team, the less likely that's going to happen. Look, business is a process of in and out, money in, money out, people in, people out. And you've got to understand, yes, your team will leave and people will probably follow them at some stage as well. The thing is, you've got a responsibility to make, while they're there, as good as possible for them. And I really like the quote that you can either train your team and they leave, or don't train them and they stay. Which one do? Yeah. And so what I did was I created a training platform, an intranet site. I started to download from my head all the things that I say for clients. So when I introduce a treatment modality, I've got a bit of a spiel that's worked over time.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that down, and then I did a video of me using that spiel, and I'd train the new practitioners at the clinic to use that spiel. And it wasn't about creating robots in the clinic, but it was about setting a benchmark, setting a standard for the service that we were providing. And then that led to the policies and procedures and the dashboarding and the monitoring the performance, and then team discussions and communication, and then systems and having a trigger for what happens when. So we started using task lists so that we knew whenever something needs to be done, it would just be on the list, and anything that was a recurring task, anything like ordering new magazines or replacing the water in the flowers or putting the bins out or cleaning the air conditioner filter, all of those things are recurring tasks that need to happen. They need to be on a task list and then someone assigned to do it.
Yeah.
And if you've got that little ecosystem of everyone knows what their job is, everyone knows when to do a job or what task needs to be done, and then some kind of vehicle so that everyone knows how to do that job as well, then you can start to step yourself out of the business, and it will be the engine room that will continue to operate whether you're in there or not.
Exactly. It's interesting. We've got a similar philosophy in know-how, Daniel, where if there's a really simple rule, and that is if something has to be done twice, then it's written down. And it becomes a process. So I think, like you, we use tools like Asana and a bunch of other stuff that becomes very easy tools for people to self-manage.
Yeah, well, what that meant was, I noticed our sign out the front of the clinic was getting a little dirty. We're on a main road. There was a bit of road dust, a bit of bird poo, and I thought, it'd probably be a good idea if that sign got cleaned every now and then. So I put on the to-do list for Wednesday, clean the sign. And Thursday came around, I was next to the clinic and the sign was clean. And I went inside, asked to clean the sign, and Emily put her hand up. She said, "Oh, that was me. I haven't seen that job before, but there were some instructions for how to do it, and I did it. Is that okay?" And I said, "Yeah, thanks." I didn't need to call a meeting, didn't need to train anyone. I just had a system in place to be able to, support people in knowing what needed to be done. And look, I'm not perfect, and we only had sort of one small clinic here, but I think that whole approach then allowed me to add more businesses and be able to have multiple things happening all at once, so that I could manage different teams and manage different ecosystems. The engine rooms were all running, and it became manageable that way.
Yeah, I know you've been through a fair bit of challenge in that transition from the hands-on practitioner through to a point now with Clinic Mastery where you're dedicating your time to helping others. Take us through some of those challenges that you did experience and what your thinking was and how you managed to get through those times to now enjoy the benefits at the other end.
Yeah, so once I came off the tools, I thought I need to do something that will keep me away. Otherwise, I'll start messing everything up and micromanaging everything. So my reward for coming off the tools that year was to buy myself a set of golf clubs. And then I remember when I was young, I grew up in a house that backed onto a golf course, and we used to collect the golf balls that fell into the backyard and sell them back to the golfers when I was 8 years old.
I used to do the same thing, mate. That's classic. Yeah. I love it.
It's great. But I got a golf membership at that same club, and it was kind of a little bit poetic that, you know, later on in life, here I am now playing golf at the same club.
Yeah.
And I played golf an inordinate number of times for that 6 months. And it was great because it gave me the space to refresh, to recharge, to really think about what's next. And then in the later half of that year, everything sort of happened all at once. So my wife and I were in Melbourne, and we're walking down the street with our new baby, and she came across the Source Bulk Foods in Prahran and had heard about this store on all the socials, and went inside and said, you know, Daniel, just leave me here for a minute. I need to check out this place. So I went around the block and sort of came back 10 minutes later. She said, no, keep going. So I went around the block again, came back 10 minutes later. She goes, no, I need more time. Came back another 10 minutes later, and she's doing cartwheels around this place. She says, Daniel, you've got to see this place. Now, at the time, just to paint a picture for you, we were activating our own almonds, right? So what this means is you soak almonds and then you dehydrate them. And this dehydrator had this sort of droning whir that was going constantly in our house 24/7. And when I walked into this store, I saw a big bulk food bin full of activated almonds, and I could just scoop out as many as I want, put them in a bag, and I thought, yes, no more dehydrator. This store is perfect. Hadn't seen anything like it in Adelaide. It kind of really appealed to my minimalist nature. You know, when you walk into a health store, it's often packed to the brim, shelves above your head full of brands you don't know in little packets and things that are really expensive. And this was just clean. It was clear. And I thought, I've got to bring this to Adelaide. So on the tram trip on the way back to the city after this little trip in Melbourne, I was on the phone putting in a franchise request, and 2 weeks later we were in Byron Bay, and we connected with some friends of ours who were also really keen to open something similar, and we were putting forward the case to open the Source Bulk Foods in South Australia. So it was very quick, and 4 months later we opened our first store. Nice. So that was good fun.
Awesome.
It was around the same time that the idea for Clinic Mastery came about. Okay. And I was with Steve McKnight, who's my business mentor, and as some might know Steve through property investing circles, he's written some very popular investing books, 0 to 130 properties, and those sorts of things. But we were in the States together, and Steve sort of conceptualized what Clinic Mastery could look like, and together I just sort of sat on that idea for a little while, shared it with a couple of people. It was after our clinic won a couple of awards, which I was very grateful for, that I started getting a few phone calls from other health professionals who were saying, hey, you won that award. How did you do that? Can you help us? And so I just started working ad hoc one-on-one with a few clinics around the place, and hey, they did really well, which was great. But there came a point where the opportunity knocked, and we had to really make something of this. And there was a need in the market that wasn't being met, and we needed to start Clinic Mastery. So around the same time we set up the Source Bulk Foods, we were looking at setting up Clinic Mastery, and I remember we sold our very first program before we'd even created it. And so nothing like putting the pressure on to really make all this work. And I remember there was a moment, I feel myself rabbiting on here, but there was a moment where we had the first store up and running. We had the second store for the Source Bulk Foods deep into, the fit out. I was project managing the fit out there. Wow. We had just released Clinic Mastery's first program, and so we were madly creating the content for that, ahead of the members that were in it, so that they could progressively work through the content that we'd sold. And we also had our first baby, had our second baby, and it was all on Easter weekend. We had a baby. We had the Glenelg store happening. We had some manager change at that store. I was recruiting for some key people at the clinic at the time, so that was pushing at me. Glenelg was pushing at me. The Mitcham store was in fit out mode, and then we had this baby, and it was a crazy time.
Man, I'm not hearing too many hours sleep happening during that period, mate.
It was kind of up at 6 a.m. and try and get some stuff done, and then get through the day, and then after dinner, head out to my office at home and sort of keep working through till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then back up at 6 a.m. the next day. And for a period of a couple of months it was a lot of work. But I do remember at the time thinking, if I can get through this where everything is pushing at me at 100%, then I'm going to be okay. I don't foresee a time ever again where I'm going to be this busy. I did think of Richard Branson at the time, and I thought, this guy, he's got however many hundreds of businesses, and 7 of them are billion-dollar companies. Surely, if he I can have 3 little businesses going. and that was my mindset at the time. It was sustainable for a couple of years, but there comes a point where you really do need to put all your energy into one thing. Mm-hmm. There's something that we say amongst the Clinic Mastery family is that 80% of your attention on something 80% of the time gives you about a 64% chance of success. So I think I realized that things were demanding more time that I had to give them, and that sort of led to me making those decisions with the help of my business mentor to reveal to me that was the case, to sell some of the businesses and really start to focus all the energy on one thing, which is where I am now. So, I'm quite grateful for it.
Yeah, so that realisation of the perhaps need to move from a diversified and quite diverse approach actually across multiple streams back to that one focus. Was that the mentor suggestion, or was that self-realisation in talking to the mentor that got you to that point?
It's really important to have other people that can speak into your life, that can look at things from a 50,000 foot view. They're at a spot where they don't see the problems that you're focusing on, and they give you a bit of a realization that I'm kind of completely missed that. I was so involved in what I was doing that I missed the potential problems that might lead to down the track. And we were talking about the source, and we're talking about these stores being something for my wife to really dig into once we had a few stores up and running, and once the kids were at school, this would be, the thing. And we realized quite practically through discussions with Steve, I owe a lot to Steve McKnight.
Great man.
He's a good friend, great man, and really has a great business mind and a great way of thinking about things, and we just clicked really well. But he laid it out for us and said, is this the way you want your life looking like, especially with all the other things that were going on? And we decided, well, we can probably do without that. So that was the first decision, and I think I absolutely believe it's the right decision, because when we sold the business, we realized there are other people out there who are more passionate about it, who can take it further, and it's better for the franchise, it's better for the customers, it's better for the team to have someone that's in it really driving it, which we weren't. Okay. And so that was a good decision there. And then with the clinic, that kind of came out of nowhere. I was approached by someone who offered to buy the clinic. It wasn't on my radar for that to happen. Mm-hmm. And then through discussions again with Steve and realizing where my energy needed to be spent, and coming back to my why and lifestyle, and leaving a mark, and being an example for my family, and helping people, and all of those things, it became apparent that actually this is a good decision for the clinic as well. And so we went through that process. And it's funny, it's only recently that I feel like I've just started to emerge from my to-do list, and I'm constantly thinking, surely I'm missing something. Surely there's something that I've got to be doing, and I need to get back on that golf course just as much as I was before, just to really settle myself down, I think.
Mate, I love that. Mate, just sort of touching on that area, I like you, I've found over time that most people tend to invest in their work, their career, or their business, and they focus on the the income side. But those who achieve the sort of freedom that you're now enjoying, like yourself, invest in growth assets like the business to give them effectively a passive form of income. It's not totally passive, but a passive form of income. Apart from the business, though, what other growth assets have you and will you invest in moving forward?
Yeah, okay. So I kind of mentioned at the beginning, I dabbled a little bit in property. And I think there's some very cool things that are out there that can be done with property. And this more sort of, renovations and subdivide and build and those sorts of things. I haven't dabbled in property for a while because it takes a lot of cash to do it and capital equity. And I would love to be able to diversify, have some index funds, have the it'd be nice to build on the super. That has not been on my radar at all.
Yeah, I understand.
as it often isn't. If you're in business, you kind of think, well, you're the only one accountable to you putting anything to super, but using super as a vehicle and, really interested in I don't know how technical I can get into this because I'm not an expert in this sort of thing at all, and I don't really know what I'm going to do here. The point is that I think the approach to business that I took was it's not so much about the money that you're making, it's about the leading inspired teams, and it's about the culture that you bring to the clinic. It's about the service that you provide to a client. And if you're providing amazing service for a client and you're doing it very consistently because you've got good systems in place, and if you've got a team that are really on board with providing that amazing service, then everything else kind of follows.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when you're sort of investing or in life, that if you're thinking about the decisions of what you're going to do that don't necessarily fulfill you in the short term, they're not comfort decisions. They're kind of, I need to do this now because this is what it's going to lead to in the future. And if I can approach life by saying, I'm going to make a decision for lifestyle, I'm going to make a decision for my family, I'm going to make a decision to be there for my kids, I may lose out a little bit of money by not being all in and, working all the time type thing. I do feel like I do work all the time. But the fact is that, by designing a life where you can let each day renew you and let each day be a motivating day, you don't feel like you need a holiday. You don't feel like you need that break because life is a break. You know what I mean?
Totally. I'm right with you there. I feel exactly the same. I spend a lot of my time what some people would say is work, but it doesn't feel like work because I just love every minute of it. So, and I've got the freedom now to do that where I like, when I like, how I like, and someone mentions work to me. I guess I see work as a dirty word because it has all of those negative connotations that people like to put on it, but it doesn't feel like that at all to me.
Yeah, and I would like to just say with Clinic Mastery, there's no way that Clinic Mastery could be what it is now. I mean, we're working with businesses all around the world. We've got an amazing team of people. There's no way that it could be the way it is now if it was just me. It really is about the other people that share that vision and share that passion for Clinic Mastery. That is the reason why Clinic Mastery is the way it is. And I'm not just talking about the other directors or the other team members, but also the members, the other people who are investing their time and money into Clinic Mastery. It's amazing to have that abundant-minded community there. But in particular with the four of us who run Clinic Mastery, you've got Jack who's attracting clients. So I'm sort of sitting in that spot where I'm curating the business academy and the group and converting and that sort of thing. And then Ben is really all about the delivery and what the program looks like. And Shane is about retention and team and those sorts of things. And I think whenever you try to do all of those things at once, perhaps it's possible, but it will never really go beyond your abilities to be able to handle all of that. And wherever your weakest link is, that's the biggest your business is really going to grow. So where you can come alongside other people who can fill that weakness, if you're aware of the weaknesses that you have, and then you can have someone who can actually fill that weakness. And if you can let yourself go a little bit and realize that there are other people who can be as passionate and can do the job as maybe as well as you think you can do it, then that really works. And then what's happened is we've got other coaches on our team, and they've come through the business academy, and they live and breathe clinic mastery. They love the philosophy of, we are here to help clients get the best experience possible and help other business owners create amazing experiences for their clients. And guess what? Business does well as a result. And it's not about me anymore in any way, shape or form. It's really a movement that's been created, and I'm just so excited by it. I'm so, I love what's going on there, and it's not me, but it's the purpose. That's what's driving the whole thing. So
I love the energy that we can all hear it. That the passion and the energy is palpable, Daniel, in relation to the commitment to that, and it's multiplying that energy is exponential, and it's easy to see why Clinic Mastery is doing so well. But the same approaches that you're talking about, I mean, if we draw a thread through some of the stuff you've said, finance is like oxygen. Any business needs that to survive, and you're smart enough to recognise what you need to do there. I think any form of success is an elite team sport, and that means that you've got to have the best of the best with a shared values and shared vision, that where 1 + 1 doesn't equals 2, 1 + 1 equals 5 or 6, and that's exactly what you've created with Clinic Mastery. You've got a bunch of like minds that have all got shared energy, shared value, shared passion, and the synchronicity of that is what's attractive to those who can actually see it, feel it, and then it starts to take a movement of its own, exactly as you've said. Mate, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit, because you and I first met when you were dabbling into the property space, and I've got obviously a vested interest, or I call it an invested interest, in sharing some of that property journey with some of the listeners as a parallel to what they're doing. I guess my feeling is that because a lot of people just focus on either their business or their career, what we need to be thinking about in terms of securing the future is, whether it be property or shares or index funds that you've mentioned, or super or what have you, having things that are sort of growing quietly in the background that will sort of secure the future. Just share with us your thoughts around why you looked at property early on in conjunction with Steve McKnight, which is where you and I met, and what your thinking was at the time, and where that got you to, and some of the good and the bad parts of that part of the experience.
Yeah, so I was introduced to Steve. His business partner at the time, Jeremy, we went to church together, and he sent me a few of Steve's books, and one of the books was called The Fundamentals of Investing Success, and it was sort of an A4 workbook, and I read it and I went, oh, this just makes so much sense, and they're simple principles, spend less than you earn. And those sorts of things, it's not rocket science, is it? But that got me interested in the results community, and being mentored around the possibilities for property, and seeking that education as well, and actually taking action too. Not getting too hung up on is it going to be perfect or not. Sometimes you just got to do it. A friend of mine who I play golf with says sometimes you just jump off the cliff and grow wings on the way down.
Love it.
And so I sort of dabbled in that and got into the community, and Steve would do a market update every now and then. And in one of his books, he was talking about his knee. And at one of the events, he started talking about his knee. And I thought, you know what? I'm a podiatrist. I might be able to help here, because he says he's seen a lot of physios. Maybe I can do something. And I remember we were in the lift together once, and I was volunteering. I loved always volunteering for these events whenever they came up, because it put me in the room with a lot of the speakers. It gave me an insight into what happens behind the scenes. So I said to Steve, look, have you ever thought of seeing a podiatrist for your knee? He goes, no, I haven't. And sort of just sat on it for a while, and I kind of let it go, and that was fine. And I remember I was mowing my lawn out the front of my house, and I got a call on my phone, and it was Steve McKnight. And he said, hey mate, I've been thinking about what you said about seeing a podiatrist. Who can you recommend near me? And he's in Melbourne and I'm in Adelaide. And I said, well, why don't you come over here and let me have a look at it? And he goes, all right, I'll see if I can get a flight on points. Now, you've got to understand, Steve McKnight, a very successful guy, right? But it just speaks to his value of $1, that he would look to find a flight on points. In any case, he came to Adelaide and I spent a good session with him and sort of here I was using my treatment room, my clinic, as a vehicle for connecting with people that I admired and wanted to be like. And that was sort of a little moment in that room. And I was thinking, okay, this is good. I felt like I did my best work on him. And at the end, he pulled out his wallet to pay. And I thought, you know what? No, let's, it's on me, this one. Thanks for coming over and thanks for, all the inspiration for everything I've done so far and everything. And he left the clinic and goes, all right, I'll owe you one then. And I thought, wow, okay. So someone like Steve saying he owes me one. Your chest puffs out a little bit more, You start to think, okay, that's interesting. I don't know what this means, but there we go. And what happened is a few weeks later, I got another call, and we were talking about his situation and all of that sort of thing. But he said, look, I've been thinking about how I owe you one. How would you like to come with me to the States for a couple of weeks?
Wow.
I've got a project over there where I'm looking at some commercial property. You can come over, just take a look and, see how it happens from the back end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. And it's funny because you'd think that anyone would jump on that opportunity and just go there. But really, it was actually hard to take a couple of weeks away from everything that was going on at the time, family and, I missed out on seeing my daughter taking her first steps, all of that sort of stuff. Sometimes you got to put that aside. But I went over there and it was funny, Bushy. We were driving around. This guy works, man, 16 hours a day. We were up in the car. We were planning the properties that we were going to look at. And it took me a little while to realize, but we were on a shopping spree and we had about $50 million to spend. And I was all of a sudden in the car with the guy who's got $50 million to spend on commercial property. And he starts throwing numbers at me and saying, okay, here's the cap rate, here's the net, the NOI, the net operating income, the investment return, all of that sort of stuff. Is this a good deal or not? And he's challenging me to make quick mental calculations and to really think about money in terms of its investment. We had lunch once and he's like, oh, I'm sick of thinking about property at the moment. So we were just talking about sports and what was on the TV at the time. We were eating a meal and he goes, hand me your computer. So, and he jumps onto LoopNet, which is the America's version of realcommercial.com. And he starts looking for property. I said, hang on a minute. You said you were sick of property. He goes, well, what do you think of this one? And I'm over there. We're at Bonefish Cafe in Fort Myers in Florida. And here he is presenting a property to me. And he goes, I'm going to go to the toilet. I want you to ring the agent and have a chat with them about the property. So I'm thinking, okay, here, deep end. And over that lunch, he made a deal that would net him over the next 8 years $120,000, over lunch.
Yeah.
And he turned to me and he said, Daniel, that's a lot of toenails, isn't it? and Bushy, that was the moment that I saw the light.
I love that, mate.
And I realised, actually, there's something to this, and I'll be able to help a lot more people, with the right means to be able to do so. And that kind of kicked off my interest in property, as it would. I've been over there a couple of times with Steve now, and that sort of developed into, the friendship that we have now. So, I guess that's sort of where it all began.
I love it, mate. Well, it's fair to say that I own property in the US as a direct result of Steve McKnight. He inspired me and my then business partners to jump on a plane. And we followed the same path, Fort Myers, Florida, we ended up going further afield, and we've certainly secured. We've got 3 properties over there as a direct result of the inspiration and motivation that came from Steve. So he's got an immense amount of respect for what he does. And he's just, a person with a smart intellect but great integrity and great values, which is something that I really admire about him in the property space, because there's some what I've called some fairly selfish interests in the property game at times. No, awesome, mate. Well, that's good to share, because for listeners, we worked very closely with Daniel, and he was quite proactive in the property space, buying an old place in a suburb in Adelaide, bowling it over, building 2 nice properties, and some other work that you were doing at the time, mate. So what I love about you is you take the action. You've got the courage. You do the maths. You crunch the numbers, but then you do something about it. And I've seen a lot of very intelligent people who are gonna, but never actually get there. You have that inbuilt courage to take the leap. Where does that courage come from, mate? Because a lot of people just, if they'd gone to uni, they'd go and become a podiatrist and work for someone else. You've had the courage very early to build your own business, to diversify into other businesses, to invest in property. Where does that courage come from, do you think?
I'd say probably 2 things. Firstly, I remember when I was thinking about opening the clinic, I was driving down the road and I saw all these signs out on the street. I'm not being, sort of super philosophical here. Literally, there's a business, there's another business, there's another business, there's another business. As I'm driving along, I'm thinking, gee, there's hundreds of businesses, even just from work to home. And I thought, every one of these businesses represents someone who decided to go, stuff it, I'm going to open a business. And they did it. And whether it was selfish or not, or whether I was insightful or not, I don't know. But I kind of thought, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. So I'm just going to do it. And as long as I'm confident in my ability to generate clients or to be able to market myself, then it's going to be okay. And thankfully, that's sort of how it was. The other thing is, my father has always been in business, and he's always taught me, you've got to be in business. It's the way it needs to be, and he's absolutely right. At one stage, he had a number of careers, and at one stage he was day trading on the stock market. And if you think about stockbroking, and you think of day trading and in particular currency trading, some of these things, you're looking at the market movement every 10 minutes, not at the close of the day. You're looking at very micro, and he'd show me charts, and he'd show me volume, and he'd show me when you pick the top and you pick the bottom. And, there was so much happening in those moments, and it's quite a stressful
very
thing to do. And I kind of thought what I observed was he would always wait until the market was at its top to sell. But then you never quite knew where the top was. So he'd be really reticent to sell before it had hit the top, because he was worried about the extra dollars that he might lose out on. And so he'd come back the other way, and he'd hold on, and eventually reluctantly sell at a level where he'd probably lose a lot more dollars. And the other way around. I mean, he was very smart about it, and that's fine. But I kind of observed this, and I thought, you know what? Why not give up a few dollars just to know that you've made a little bit? Gambling's never really been a thing for me. I mean, growing up a salvo, it's not a thing for salvos anyway. But, if I was to do that, I would kind of feel like I would just sort of leave a little bit on the table. I don't know, and be content with that. And I think that trying not to eke out the 100% value of every dollar, I used to be very tight on dollars, and people often laugh at the old Daniel that was very tight around money. And, I think that kind of limits your ability be successful in that sense. You've got to understand the value of the dollar. Don't get me wrong. You need to understand the value of each dollar, and a dollar saved is a dollar earned, and all of those sorts of things. But leaving a little bit on the table can be a good thing. So I watched his habits, and I realized, I don't want to do that. I kind of need to jump in. I just need to take action. I would sell now, or I would buy now, or it's just, like I said before, you jump off a cliff and grow wings on the way down.
Well, it does take some courage, and there's a what I see the difference between yourself and a lot of others that have achieved what you have is that we live in Australia where we've almost got it too good because it almost becomes like golden handcuffs and prevents us from taking the risk because we all naturally seek comfort. So what are your thoughts around that, and what advice do you have for people that are, they're probably working 60 or 80 hours a week in a good job and earning good income, but they're slaves to the machine? What are your thoughts around what those people should be thinking and doing?
Yeah, I think it comes down to perspective, and something that I've been doing, I don't know if this is nerd hour or not, but trying to delve into just history and the way civilizations have worked and what's led to the way life is now. Why is it that we go to work? Why is it that this happens? So don't want to get too philosophical here, but there was a story about a group of people that had been really left alone, undiscovered on the North Sentinel Islands. It's in the Andaman Sea. It's sort of India kind of way has jurisdiction over this island, but there's a group of the North Sentinelese that have lived on this island for all history, and anytime someone has tried to make contact with these people, it's never ended well. Apart from one successful contact back in the 70s where they brought a boatload of coconuts and got as far as the shore, and that was it. But I think about it's estimated there's about 400 people on this island, right? Mm-hmm. And I think about this beautiful island, this beach, and these people that are there living a life as though we lived, 10,000 years ago. And it's an opportunity to go back in time 10,000 years and see what human history was like. We've actually got it living right now to be able to do that. But I do wonder, what would stop someone from standing on the beach and going, I wonder what's out there. I'm curious. What is that plane that's coming across? Or what's beyond the water here? And what's stopping them from actually, making a boat and going out and finding out, And I start to think about human history and how we've explored, we've been curious, we've had ideas, and we've kind of pushed boundaries and pushed conventional thinking. And for them, I know that if one of their people was to do that, it would disrupt society as they knew it. And that's a pattern that's been repeated over time, that whenever someone has been bold enough to step outside and being curious enough to think of a better way, or to explore something new, or to try something new, or to think of a new idea, it threatens society as we know it. It threatens civilization as we know it. But they've got the guts to be able to do that. And that's the reason why we live the way we do now. Over history, someone has decided, I want to be more comfortable when I go to bed. So they've created mattresses, and now we sleep on mattresses. It's just simple things like that. Over time, people have had an idea, and that's the way we live. And then I start thinking about success and what that leads to. And you think the reason we live the way we are is because of the code that's been developed over time, and really it's just a framework. And your role is to, I guess, outsmart the game. You've just got to keep trying things and keep doing things until you become successful. Success is not easy, otherwise everyone would be successful. And I think you're in a machine. We just do things because that's how it's done. I would like to challenge people to sort of step out of that thinking and start thinking like someone on the beach, looking out and being curious and going, how can I make this better? How can I make my world better? How can I challenge conventional thinking and do something greater, and just take that leap? And you might be challenging life as you know it. You may be, flattened by your friends or your family because it would challenge their existence as well, but you've kind of got to do it. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
It's really interesting. I love where you're going with that, because many years ago, Daniel, one of the first jobs I did as an architect, I worked in New Guinea. And I spent a lot of time in a very remote village called Tufi in the northeastern part of New Guinea. And I was an architect responsible for building a wilderness safari lodge. And there was only myself and a Kiwi out there initially as we designed and used locals to build this thing, which was, we used an old airstrip from the American World War II days as a base to start. And I'll never forget, because we used to get charters of fishing boats coming down from Ley, which was a bit further up the coast, on the weekends, and people would fish, and then they'd head back. And it was paradise. It was an absolutely beautiful place, beautiful beaches, these fjords that went up into the mountains. There was so many fish in the water, you could just about walk on the water. It was an absolute tropical paradise. And I remember one of the local guys sitting me down one day and said, "You white fellas, you're pretty interesting. You spend all of your time busting your buns to do on weekends what I do every day. I don't understand you." And it's really interesting. I think there's two ends of this spectrum where if we keep it really simple and our contentment is really simple, then that is a sustainable and maintainable lifestyle. Because if you don't need much and you just live every day, awesome. But the desert in between that and the other end, where you've put yourself in that position and created a sustainable income and lifestyle that allows you that freedom, the comfort, and more choice. But in between those two, there's a rat race. And I think the ones in the rat race are the ones I feel sorry for, because they're striving and they're doing things because they have to, not because they want to, because they have to, because their lifestyle inflation's at a point where they're not working because they want to anymore, that they're having to pay the bills. And that's a really difficult place to be. And I think you've got to go one way or the other. You're either debunk it and become really simple and live off the smelly oily rag, or you create a system that's scalable and saleable and gives you the time back, because it's all about time. If I draw a line through everything that we're talking about here, it's having free time on your hands that is actually the key component. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think creating that mechanism is important. It's not easy, though, and I think just recognizing that it's not easy and understanding that you have to sacrifice in order to do that. I mean, we went 2 years without drawing a cent. And, that's hard, when you're living off baked beans and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, been there. Yeah.
And that was only recently, and there's been other times when that's been the case as well. And the confidence in what you're doing, though, is that it's leading to something. And yes, you're enjoying the journey. And it's funny because whenever you reach a goal, it's like you've climbed a mountain, and then the only way is down really after that. So it's not really about the goal, but it's about the journey to get there. And I think to understand that there is a process you need to respect. You don't need to try and cheat the system. And I don't think anyone should try and cheat the system, but rather outsmart it. Anyone can do it. And just recognize that life now is better than it's ever been in history. The way we live, our lifestyle, is better than kings and queens from, however many years ago. The ability for us to, it's just simple things like a shelter over. We don't worry about disease like they used to back then. We don't worry about war or the fact that we can lie here and we don't worry about our kids just suddenly. There is a lot to worry about, and I know a lot of people have gone through a lot of hurt and pain, and we have too, and that's fine. I get that. It's not all rosy, but there is a process. There is a process you need to take, and often it's a difficult road to do it. But if your conviction and your purpose is big enough, then it is achievable.
Yeah, no, brilliantly said, mate. Mate, I'm going to switch into what I call the ambush session, where I'm going to get you tap dance to some pretty quick questions that the listeners are always wanting people's thoughts on. And I'll kick off with what's your favourite quote and why?
Okay. Well, I think I've had to learn that there's a process to everything. I'm the sort of guy that I would pull up a seedling the day after I planted it just to see if the roots have grown a little bit more. It's sort of part of that. But something Steve said recently at one of his events was, you can't cook a cake quicker by turning up the heat. And in that sense, trying to cook a cake quicker, you don't turn the oven up hot. There's a process that's got to take place. And I really like that. It sort of grounds me in terms of respecting the process, the time, the effort that you need to go through.
Love it. That's a really good quote. Yeah, I love that one. Mate, what about a top book that you'd recommend people read and why?
Okay. I kind of mentioned the 0 to 130 Properties in 3.5 years book by Steve. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you're talking about the rat race there. That's Robert Kiyosaki and Keith Cunningham. The E-Myth was a big one for me as well. The medical version in particular, E-Myth Medical. But I think one that really helped from a business perspective was the book Yes by Robert Cialdini.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say his name. It talks about the science of persuasion and how people think and, what big companies do to help get a message across or change human behavior. And I'm just fascinated by that sort of stuff. And there was a lot of good takeaways that we took from that in our clinic. Things like, when you want a letter to be read, put a post-it note on it. If you want it to be read even more, put a smiley face on that post-it note or a little message saying, thought you might be interested. And so whenever we sent out hard copy mail, we would always have a post-it note with thought you might be interested and a smiley face on it, and we'd be able to measure the results of that marketing stuff. So yeah, lots of good practical tips around marketing and sales and persuasion, and not in a salesy quote kind of way, but I reckon that's been a big, actionable, inspiring book for me. Yes, by Robert Cialdini.
Love it. I've never read it. I've heard a lot about it, and it's one that I've never read. So you've just inspired me to do exactly that, mate. Mate, this one's a little bit left field, but it's a thing that we constantly get and hear from people they're working with, and that is a lot of Aussies feel like they pay too much tax. So what's the top thing that you've legally done to minimise the tax that you pay?
I think my attitude to tax is always pay as much tax as you need to, as you are required to, but don't pay any more than you have to.
Yeah.
And so that means you have to have a good relationship with your accountant, and they need to understand your strategies. They need to be very on the ball in terms of what the law is saying and what opportunities there are. Sometimes, and my accountant told me this, sometimes it can be cheaper to pay the tax. If you're looking to make an investment to offset your taxable income or something like that, it's got to make sense from an investing perspective as well as a tax perspective. So if it doesn't make sense from an investing perspective and a tax perspective, then it's kind of a no deal. So sometimes it can be cheaper just to pay the tax.
Absolutely. I often joke, Daniel, I've got a really good accountant, and he says, Bushy, if you're just interested in paying less tax, I'll charge you more.
Yeah.
Because exactly on that line, your investing should be about investment, not tax. Tax is just a fringe benefit of the exercise. So, I love that. Mate, coming back onto the investment subject then, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received on your journey so far?
Okay. I would say the best advice that I was given was from an inspiring guy, Peter Daniels. He owns, I think, the world's only fully reserved gold bullion bank. He is an inspiring guy. He's in his 80s and has just made a plan to inject $200 billion into local churches around some parts of Europe. Anyway, inspiring guy. But one of those situations where I managed to have him in my treatment room at the clinic, and he said to me in that treatment room, always build a reserve. And that kind of stuck with me. You do make better decisions when you've got a reserve. You don't think with a scarcity mindset, you think with a more abundance mindset. So as long as you've got a reserve there, it does change the way you're thinking. And I really like that one, build a reserve. And something else that he said was, spend less than you earn. It's simple. It's just, it's simple things, respect the value of the dollar, spend less than you earn, and build a reserve. The worst advice, I remember I was told once, I remember at the beginning of my working career, suddenly I'm earning a salary. I'm earning some money. And, after being a school kid and then a university student, never having any money, and then all of a sudden I've got some money coming in. It was a great thing. My employer at the time has put me in touch with a financial planner to help me just, make the most of the opportunity that I now have with some money in my pocket. Mm. I've always been sort of big picture thinking and thinking about what I want to achieve and what I want to do and the goals that I had. And I gave him my list of goals.
Yep.
And he said to me, after thinking about it for a while, and he took it away. And then a week later, we came back for our review appointment. He said, okay, I'm looking at your goals here, and I think the only way you're going to achieve your investing goals is to give less.
Oh.
And I was thinking, I don't believe that. And I think I've always tried to maintain giving as part of everything, even if it costs a lot, because it has to be there at the forefront. And I don't think of giving as an expense, something in the expense column. It's an investment as well. So, yeah, I think that was my worst advice, I'd say.
Yeah, interesting. Man, that's a really interesting thing for someone to say, actually. I'd scratch my head at that one, but really interesting. We followed similar paths at different times. I did a fair bit of work with Peter Daniels, I hate to admit, but a long time ago. And same thing, really inspirational guy. A lot of time for what he did, and the program that I was part of at that time was quite foundational for me. And this was back in the 80s, actually, when I was back in the architecture trying to build my own architectural practice here in Adelaide. And he was quite inspirational at that time in terms of getting my head set right. Now, awesome, mate. Back on the personal front then, can you share with us a personal habit that you feel contributes to your success in life?
Okay, I guess lately, over the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, and this is probably a symptom of the fact that I always had so much going on the emails in my head, businesses here and there, and always something to do. I kind of adopted a minimalist lifestyle. It was also in part, with the source bulk foods, living waste free, that sort of thing. Mm. I don't chase things. I don't have many belongings. If you walk into my office, it's pretty bare apart from the microphone I'm talking to you on now and the computer that I'm standing up at my stand-up desk for. That's it. I've managed to get rid of anything that doesn't have value or utility in my life. And it's been a process that's taken a long time. It's quite challenging in a way because on one hand, there's a real statement of wealth there, because we live in a place where we can get anything we want at any time we need.
Yeah.
So why do we hold on to stuff that isn't really worth anything when if ever you need it, you can just go out and buy it?
Oh, yeah. You're sounding my beautiful wife, Sonia. We've got this really great philosophy now, and it's almost Buddhist in its minimalism, in that if we haven't used something in 3 months, we don't need it, so it's gone. And it's a really, because I have, there's certain things I have sort of an attachment to for whatever reason, but which is the heart getting in the way of the head. But we've got this philosophy now that if we buy something, we've got to give something away.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think for me, just the way that looks is I like the bed being made. I like my car being cleaned. I like, the lawn being nice. It's little things like that give me the space to be able to think. I don't wear, I kind of wear the same clothes, not the same actual clothes, but I've got a pile of 20 black t-shirts that I'll just wear. And, it's just keeping things. It's not actually, that doesn't sound very minimal, does it? But my wardrobe, I could fit into a suitcase and that's it, The point there being, it actually gives you your mind space to think about other things. It gives you the freedom to not be bogged down by, the next thing. It gives you the ability to think about experiences and those sorts of things. And look, I get it. Netflix, Marie Kondo, the art of tidying up and all of that sort of thing. It's kind of a bit of a phase, a bit of a thing at the moment. Netflix is great. There was a documentary on there called Minimalism. And I think it's funny because I watched Tony Robbins, I'm Not Your Guru, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing and that was all very inspirational and everything. And then the next thing on Netflix that came up was this documentary about minimalism. So it was like this, I'm all inspired, and then now I've got this action thing around minimalism. I'm like, yes, I can do that. And and that's sort of where that was one of the catalysts to sort of ratchet it up a notch. But yeah, in terms of investment success and a personal habit that contributes to that, it's just not having those things bog you down. It keeps you mobile. It keeps you able to think clearly and that sort of thing. And you can work from wherever you are.
I love the thinking there because if we sort of think about, there's only so much sort of brain space for making decisions. If we're creating space to put those decisions on a daily basis into the big things that make a difference, and we're not having to worry about what colour shirt am I going to wear today. I mean, it's the old Steve Jobs theory of, had blue jeans and a black T-shirt. That was it.
That's it, yeah.
And
Mark Zuckerberg and they're all, yeah.
What a great way to go! It makes perfect sense to me, mate. Because if we live in a world that can be, if you let it be, a lot of time pressure. If you're simplifying that by getting rid of the stuff that you don't really need to think about and doesn't really make a difference, so that you can put that energy into things that can make a much bigger impact, well, it's got to be a better way to live. Mate, that has been a sensational discussion, mate. Really appreciate the time. There's some absolute gold across a whole bunch of spheres that the listeners are going to really enjoy. It's been really good to touch base with you, mate. I always feel energised when we spend some time. I know that your ongoing journey is going to continue to go from great to greater. Would love to support you in whatever capacity in that regard, mate. So keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on. Have to get you on our podcast sometime, hey? Would
love to, mate. Would love to. Good on you, mate. It's been awesome. We'll talk soon, Daniel. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Bushy. Take care.
Bye. Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.